What's going on, and welcome back to another gear setup. And in this video we're going to be going over my current gun belt setup for operational use training and competition shooting. It's kind of one of those things where it's train as you fight, so no matter what, whether I'm just having fun and I'm competing, I'm training, or I'm actually out there fighting, I'm using the same setup no matter what. I've actually got two belts almost identical to each other. I have this one, which is kind of more tan, and then I have another one that's green. A couple of differences is going to be the holster. This one I have the slim fit Kydex holster on it, and the other gun belt setup that I have has a Safari Land holster on it. And then I don't have a knife or a breaching charge pouch on the other belt, and then the dump pouch is just slightly different. Still a mesh dump pouch, but it's from Tier Tactical, kind of a multi-purpose breaching dump pouch as well as water bottle holder when it comes down to it. So all of that said, the systems are almost identical when it comes down to it. So with that, I'm just going to dive right into it so that way you can see what's going on and give you a couple of variables when it comes to the overall setups of belts, so that way you can determine what's going to be best for you and how you want to set up your equipment based off of your mission, operational environment, and duty position. So diving right into it, you're going to have kind of two different concepts or setups when it comes to actual belts. You're going to have an inner belt, outer belt setup, which is the two belt system, and then you're going to have a three belt system, which is going to be an inner belt, an outer belt kind of sleeve, and then a liner belt, which is going to run through that kind of a sleeve belt. So an example of the inner outer belt or two belt system is going to be your Ronin Tactics, your AWS, your 21st Tactical, your Pharaoh Concepts, your Lead Devil. All of those are going to be a two belt system where you have your inner Velcro belt and then your outer Velcro belt with Molly. The three belt system is going to be more of like your HSGI, your Cry Precision modular rigger belt, and then the AVS belt that they also run. Previous to this belt system that I have, I was running the modular rigger belt, and I had the CTOM's kind of rappelling harness rescue harness system integrated into that modular rigger belt, and then I actually bought a separate inner belt for that whole system. Super expensive setup when it comes down to it, because you're paying for pretty much three separate systems altogether. You're paying for a separate inner belt, you're paying for a separate liner belt, which is that modular rigger belt, or your sleeve belt, and then you had that liner belt, which was from CTOM's. So it was about $500-600 all together just for the belt setup. But it was one of the most like multifunctional setups that I'd ever ran, where I could rappel with it, I could mountaineer with it, I could do helicopter stuff with it. I mean, the thing was capable of doing a lot. It was just really, really expensive. In conjunction with, I wanted to just streamline everything, get everything more condensed. I decided to go with a Ronin Tactics belt. I have recently just purchased the Bison belt from Pharaoh Concept, and from what I've been told, that is the standard in the industry right now. So I am looking to transition over to that system here in the near future once I get that in. So I'm really excited for that. We'll see what it looks like and how it plays out once I get it and I get to play around with it for a little bit. So moving on, that's kind of belts in a nutshell and what you have as far as the two different kind of trains of thought, running a three belt system or a two belt system. I prefer two belt. I just think it's way more efficient and you kind of get more out of it in the long run, unless you're in a job position, say for like a PJ, where you might want to have that modular rigger belt, that CTOM's rappelling harness, and set up integrated into all of that, and then have another liner belt or an inner belt that's a little bit beefier to be able to set all that up on your pants and whatnot. So options, you get to determine what's going to be best for you. As far as belts go, though, I prefer running belts with a Cobra buckle, especially for if you're going to run anything safety-wise, trying to tie into a helicopter with a safety lanyard and tie into a vehicle. You're rappelling, anything like that, I would recommend running a Cobra buckle or something more robust than a Cobra buckle. It's just going to be key for your safety when it comes down to it. In conjunction with having a D-ring, whether you're going to need it for safety or not, one consideration is if you're not running it for a helicopter safety configuration, you can run it for casualty recovery. So if a dude gets hit, he's down, you need to go tie into the back of his plate carrier and drag him behind cover to render aid. You can do that with this Prusik Purcell. The Prusik Purcell was a concept that I learned from a PJ. He was using that as his helicopter safety lanyard as well as a drag lanyard to be able to drag a casualty out of a bad situation and provide or render aid as needed. So I have a video on how to set one of these up. Really simple, not really expensive. The key thing when it comes to why I prefer running this over a manufactured safety lanyard is because I've blown out all the stitching in a safety lanyard before trying to drag a casualty behind cover to render aid in a training scenario. So never again will I buy 3 or 4 safety lanyards when I can just build them and save the money on that. So that's the key thing there. Moving on though, we have Night Eyes carabiners for chem lights. This is just one of those things that if you need chem lights, you have the ability to run those. I have ran the Blue Force Gear Marco, which is pretty much it's kind of like a magazine dispenser for chem lights. The unfortunate thing is they are not reloadable. Have I reloaded it? Yes. It's kind of a tricky way of doing it. They recommend not doing it, but it can be done. Unfortunately, I think it's a waste of money because they're super expensive. I would rather be able to have a system where I can just reload the chem lights in there than have something that I have to buy new every single time. It doesn't make sense to me, but I think it's a phenomenal system. It just needs to be reloadable. That aside though, getting into magazines, there are a lot of different options and setups when it comes to magazine carriers. If you want something more universal, go with the Hsgi or the S-Tax. They're going to be pretty much universal to any magazine, whether you want to do a single stack 1911 all the way up to a double stack 1911. You have options with that. So that's going to be your more universal option. These are the T-Rex Arms Mars magazine carriers for both pistol and rifle. The reason why I prefer running these is because I run multiple pistols and I want the mags canted. It was a trick that I had learned, or when I say trick, a tip that I had learned from a competition shooter to have your magazines canted. It just helped with getting those mags out. It was a little bit more efficient, a little bit faster, and biomechanically you could say it was just way easier for me to be able to get those mags out, reload that gun, get that gun back in the fight, as well as get that gun back into the competition. So you get these Blade Tech kind of clamp systems. You screw your magazine carrier onto them, and then this will just drop right on to the belt, clamp into place, and then it just locks right in. And that's it. It's as simple as that. So the different mags or different pistols that I'm running that are running different magazine carriers, I can switch in between Glock, SIG, Smith & Wesson, 1911, 2011, so on down the line if I wanted to get into like Hsgi and some of the other companies that are out there. So you have a lot of options and capabilities with these, but it is an expensive setup because you have to buy the Blade Techs and the magazine carriers pretty much per each gun. So a little bit more expensive, but a lot more adaptable across the spectrum from competition to training to operational use versus something that's specific, that's universal to every single gun and pistol, but it's straight up and down. It just works what's best. It's what works best for me. Some people it may not work. Some people may want to save the money and just run something more universal. So moving on, we have the Mars Rifle Mag Carrier on the Safariland Mid-Ride Loop Drop. The key thing with this is it's going to drop that magazine down low enough to where it's not going to interfere with your cummerbund on your plate carrier. It was one of my biggest pet peeves running just a standard magazine pouch on the belt, was that magazine was sticking up high enough to where it would catch onto my cummerbund and my radio. So I dropped this down. It was a kind of a pro tip that I learned from a guy that had an ungodly amount of deployments. So really good dude, really good mentor. He showed me that, and I will never go back. So take that from multiple lessons learned from multiple deployments, both from myself and from other people. Having your magazine drop down below where that cummerbund is going to be, and pretty much when that magazine is in here, it's going to sit kind of flush with the top of your pistol mags across kind of a level playing field, so it's not going to get caught up on your plate carrier. I will never go back. I'll just say that. Moving on, we have a small, just tier tactical flashbang pouch for multi-tool more than anything, but I can throw flashbangs in there as well as Enola Gay smoke grenades. It makes it very universal, very adaptable to whatever I have going on, but primarily for multi-tools. It's one of those things. It's not if you need it, but when you need it. I can't tell you how many times I've needed a multi-tool more than anything else. So with that, I have the Hsgi dump pouch. I've had this dump pouch almost my entire career. Phenomenal dump pouch when it comes down to it. The mesh dump pouch, real key when it comes to like maritime operations and being in watery and sandy environments. It's just going to fall right out rather than getting all caught up and stuck in the dump pouch. So I always run mesh dump pouch just because no matter what the environment is, I don't have to worry about stuff getting caught up in there. Next, I have the Aws Med Pouch. This is a drop-down med pouch to where you can just pull out the med components and everything, and it all kind of lays out in a foldable sleeve. But it drops that med pouch below the belt and underneath my dump pouch. So one, it gets a little bit of protection from the dump pouch. Two, it offsets underneath the belt, so that way I can open up that belt for other equipment that I may need, whether it's a shotgun hook or a weapons hook, to be able to retain a shotgun for shotgun breaching, or if I want to have it set up kind of in the configuration that I have now for breaching charges and my knife, I have the ability to set all of that up on this belt, and it just opens everything up for more useful space and other equipment. So I highly recommend it. A lot of the guys that I've been working with have been transferring or transitioning over to set up more like this, so that way it just opens the belt up for more equipment and what they need. It really comes down to whatever your mission is dictating you need, you can set it up on your belt right there. In conjunction with, oh man, I just lost my train of thought. There was one other thing, but I can't remember. When it comes to having your belt set up with a med kit or your med kit set up on your belt, if you ever have to ditch your plate carrier, it allows you to still have that medical supply readily accessible to you, so that way you're not trying to pull your med kit off of your plate carrier as you're trying to egress out of a really bad situation. More of kind of like seer evasion stuff, but when it comes down to it, I would rather have my med already set up on my gun belt, so that way if I'm hit and I don't have my plate carrier because I've ditched it, I still have the medical supply to be able to self-treat and then have somebody treat me in the event that I can't treat myself. So that's kind of that key piece there. When it comes to knives, I set my knife up right behind my holster for my pistol and where my pistol and everything is set up, so that way when it comes to draw strokes, my knife draw stroke is the same as my pistol draw stroke, so if I need to pull that knife out instead of that pistol, it's really easily accessible. I don't have to try and find it or go to some other portion or placement on my belt. It comes right out and it's quick, fast, and no issues there when it comes down to it. When it comes to pistol holsters, there's a lot of pistols out there and a lot of different pistol holsters. I've ran a couple of different variations of holsters. Legacy Firearms and Slim Fit holsters are kind of my go-to right now for Kydex holsters. I absolutely love them. I think they're a phenomenal product. And the cool thing with these is they will run these Safariland QLS clips. So I have my mid-ride loop drop to offset that pistol down below my belt, so that way it's not getting caught up on my plate carrier like the rifle mag. And then these QLS clips give me the ability to swap in and out of Safariland holsters, competition holsters, and holsters for different pistols and all of that. So it's really easy to set things up and configure things for different types of venues, whether I'm in a competition shoot or I'm in a training scenario and I'm working with students and they're running different pistols. I can actually swap out that holster and pistol, so that way I'm using the same pistol that they're using, and then I can set things up for operational use and what I would use operationally. So it gives me a lot of versatility and a lot of options when it comes to setting up the pistol and being very universal across the board, or adaptable, I should say, is kind of a better term. So clips right into place and you're good to go. When it comes to holsters, one key thing that I learned with Safariland ALS holsters is if you get the ALS holster with the X300 Lite setup and configuration, that holster will also hold the Enforce APL and the APL-C. So if you want to run those APL lights inside of that holster, it will work. Unfortunately, when it comes to Kydex holsters, I have to get pretty much everything custom made because I only use the APL light for a lot of my full-size pistols, so I have to get everything custom made for that because not a lot of companies like to make that holster with that full-size light. So food for thought if you're running that same system. Slim Fit Holster is an awesome company, and they've worked with me on some custom products and whatnot for a couple of different pistols that I have, and I've recommended them to a couple of other people, and across the board they are a phenomenal product, and a lot of people agree. For the price point, the simple setup and configuration, it is a really good product. So highly recommend it when it comes down to it. Moving on though, we have leg strap, Safariland leg strap, nothing fancy, nothing crazy when it comes down to it. So I recommend having it just because it helps prevent that holster from trying to like jam up into your side when you're trying to pull that pistol out. So, and then last but not least, we have tourniquets. So when it comes to tourniquet placement and setup, I always like to center all of my tourniquets on close to the center of my belt as well as the center of my plate carrier. One of the biggest arguments and debates is tourniquet placement and the SOPs that I've seen across the board. Coming from the infantry, I knew the SOP was in your leg pocket or in your shoulder pocket for your blouse, and the constant argument is what happens if my arm gets blown off when we hit an IED, or if we hit an IED? And there's a valid point. And what I learned was, hey, it's just easier to set up everything center to where it's easily identifiable for you as well as other people. In the event that you lose a limb, you still have your tourniquet, so you can still apply that tourniquet to that limb. I would recommend running both a cat tourniquet as well as a soft T. So that way you have a tourniquet for legs and then you have a tourniquet for arms. Sometimes you're going to need two tourniquets for your legs, so having one on your belt, one on the bottom of your plate carrier is there for those types of situations and scenarios. When it comes to some people arguing about the whole UV light when it comes to tourniquets, a lot of guys that I work with as well as myself do not like putting anything around the tourniquet, because when we need it, we want to pull it out, be able to immediately apply it, and we don't want to fight pouches, we don't want to fight sleeves and shrouds and other types of covers for your tourniquet and all of that stuff. So if you're somebody that is concerned about the whole UV light aspect of it, one easy thing that you can do is just take a sunglasses case, throw your tourniquet inside of that, and then throw it on your belt and on your plate carrier, and that will protect it from that UV light. I'm not really going to get into it any more than that. I've been a part of plenty of arguments and debates on that. So with that, if you have any questions, please feel free, leave a comment. I'll help you out in any way that I can in answering those questions. If there's something that I can't answer, I'll pass that off to somebody else that probably can answer that. So with that, like, share, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.